Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for pushing play. I have a very interesting broadcast ready for you here. We're going to talk about the deep state. We're going to talk about the tunnel makers. We're going to talk about DUMBs, deep underground military bases, and so much more. On the line right now is our good friend Sofia Smallstorm. You know her. She's the producer of 9/11 Mysteries. She's done groundbreaking work on the Sandy Hook mystery, of course, exposing Sandy Hook in 2, 3, 4, and 5 dimensions, and so much more. Sofia's here right now. How are you, Sofia?
Fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming back. And of course, you guys can find Sofia's work at sofiasmallstorm.com and at Avatar Products. That's her online store where she sells really remarkable things, all natural, all healthy. Check it out, avatarproducts.com. Sofia, we're going to talk about some things today that are a little directional change in terms of what we typically cover at SGT Report, where we focus on economics, precious metals, corruption, political corruption, geopolitical corruption. We like to expose the New World Order, but this conversation actually fits very well into that overarching theme, doesn't it? Because you and I both know that the deep state is up to many nefarious things, not the least of which is building deep underground military bases that no one really knows about. And before we get started, I just want to ask you for your thoughts on the Denver airport, Sofia, because as serendipity would have it, we just posted on Sunday night from our friends over at Secure Team a video called Secret Doomsday Base Under Denver Airport Exposed. And I want to take folks through some of these unusual facts about the Denver airport because I think it helps tie in what you're going to talk about, which is what in the heck is going on with the Cumberland Gap Tunnel near the junction of Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee. Can we just talk a little bit about the Denver airport first?
Sure. I've heard of the Denver airport that it goes underground. First of all, above ground, the new design that they implemented there is extremely Masonic. There are all kinds of really spooky, twisted murals. But I've heard that that is actually a portal. There are shafts, elevators to this underground base. And we've heard of underground bases in other places, and they're called military bases, bunkers, hideouts. But Sean, I have now gotten an impression of what this is really all for. I mean, I've seen it in a big picture way after I did this research when somebody threw the Cumberland Gap information into my lap.
Yeah, and guys, Sofia has covered this Cumberland Gap tunnel mystery in her latest Avatar update from April and May 2016. But let's talk a little bit about the Denver airport. Again, it was serendipitous that Secure Team released a video just the night before I'm speaking with you here, Sofia, and we knew we were going to have this conversation about something so similar. Now, guys, the Denver airport is the largest airport in the United States, and at the time it was built, Denver didn't need a new airport. They already had Stapleton just 6 miles away from Denver. The Denver airport is more like 25 to 30 miles away. And the cost overruns alone on the Denver airport exceeded $2 billion. That's just the cost overruns. It's the largest airport in the United States, covering 53 square miles. And as Sofia noted, it's very Masonic in its overtones. I mean, even the airport runways form a swastika when looking at them from above. There's a Mustang with glowing red eyes outside, which is very satanic in its overtones. And the artist who built it died while building it when the horse's head fell on him and severed an artery in his leg. There are Masonic stone tablets and plaques around the airport. And on the dedication stone inside the airport, there's an engraving that says the New World Airport Commission, which doesn't actually even exist. And it's confirmed that there's a 360,000 square foot underground base below the airport with 5 large buildings that were constructed and placed below the airport. That's confirmed. The airport now claims that they are used only for storage. And the last thing I'll mention about this Denver airport, guys, is there's a landfill located just 2 miles west of the airport, and the trucks carrying dirt to that landfill have never stopped coming. So, what we do know is that there is a deep state in control of the United States government. We know about the continuity of government plans. There's some nefarious stuff going on. And now I'm going to turn it over to Sofia because she's uncovered some very interesting information about the Cumberland Gap Tunnel. Sofia, take it away.
All right. Well, I have to give credit to the person who handed me this information, who really did the footwork and has a website, which we will reveal eventually. But I had, driven across the United States and seen this sign for Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Pass, Cumberland Tunnel off Interstate 81. Now, a long time ago, when the Native Americans lived here solely, there was this skinny little pass in the Appalachians, which came to be called the Cumberland Pass. And they traveled that pass to get through the mountains. And then when the country filled up with settlers and got more modern, there was Route 25E, US 25E, went through that Cumberland Pass. And it earned the name Massacre Mountain at that spot because people were dying in car accidents from the twisting road. So the government decided by around 1980 to build a tunnel underground because there were 5 traffic accidents a year and that was too many. All right, so who built this Cumberland Tunnel, this underground pass through the mountains? Parsons Brinckerhoff, multinational engineering firm. S.A. Healy, who else do we have here? Engineers like Thomas Cusel, who designed the NORAD bunker in Cheyenne Mountain. We've got people like Vasim Durgman, I believe his name is. He's a specialist in elevated rail systems. The budget for Cumberland Tunnel, now this is not a big deal. This is a tunnel through the mountains. It's short. Was $280 million. It was completed in 1993, but it wasn't open to the public until 1996. And if you look for the documentation, the spending of the money, you cannot add up $280 million, not by any means. There is so much missing money. So we have to start looking at the geography of mountains. On the surface of the earth, there are mountains, and there are plenty in Colorado. But underneath mountains, there appear to be inordinate numbers of caves. There are underground rivers. There are lakes. It's a whole underworld. Now, I don't want it to be lost on you what underworld really signifies when you talk about Satanism and Masonic dealings, right?
Right.
So why was there an elevated light rail specialist brought to the Cumberland project who had worked internationally? Why was $4 million spent on aluminum rail for a tunnel that shows no rail anywhere? Why are the workers who worked on the project talking about how many rooms and levels there are to the Cumberland Tunnel? How many doorways that lead into caves, and if you go in through those doorways, as they did only when they were working on it, they were not allowed, nobody's allowed to go in there except, let's just call it classified special people. So you see these giant lakes in there, and you can't even shine a flashlight on the other side. Virginia, remember that Cumberland Gap is right at that juncture of Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee. Virginia alone has 4,400 documented caves. And the lore of the people who live around the Cumberland Pass, Cumberland Gap, they report as children going into these caves and playing around between the stalagmites and stalactites. I don't know, people say it that way. I've said stalagmites and stalactites. But anyway, they played in there. One man said that his father told him that in the 40s, the time of the Second World War, he had gone in there with a friend and he had hiked for half a night through a place called Cudjoe's Cave, which is now called Gap Cave, pushing through and beyond the known cave, the part known to the public. And he and his friend discovered this thing that you could only call the airplane room. It was a cavern so enormous that you could actually fly a plane in it. So that's the dimension of what we have under our mountain chains in America. And undoubtedly, we've got it all over the world. There's enough room to build another world. And when you look at these projects for the airport, for the tunnel, you will see that millions, even billions, as you've told us, have been earmarked for these constructions, yet you can't count the money in terms of what you see. So it is actually being used on things that you cannot see. And they will tell you it's storage, but you can bet your boots it's not storage. It's storage not for us anyway. I believe there's a whole world being built. And now I want to get to the really spooky part. So not far from Route 81 is a place called Burgoynesville, Tennessee. And after the Arab oil embargo of the 70s, when the United States was shaking and trembling because, well, what are we going to have for power? There was a huge burst of interest in nuclear power plants. The Tennessee Valley Authority alone commissioned 17 nuclear power plants. Just Tennessee, look at the size of Tennessee, it's not that big. And only 5 were completed. Now, that means 17 minus 5 is 12. There were 12 unfinished nuclear power plants in Tennessee. So let's look at one of them. It was called Phipps Bend, P-H-I-P-P-S, Phipps Bend in Burgoynesville. And there was, in 1980, the delivery of not one, but actually 2 nuclear reactor pressure vessels that were trundled in with a convoy of 30 vehicles. They had to actually fortify roads and bridges. They had to prepare, I read, for 3 years to bring these to the Phipps Bend nuclear power plant.
Under contract to the Tennessee Valley Authority, the VSL Corporation successfully transported and installed a 2 million pound reactor pressure vessel for the Phipps Bend nuclear power plant in eastern Tennessee. Measuring 80 feet in length by 26 feet in diameter, the RPV was the heaviest load ever moved along U.S. public roads.
And everybody lined the roads to see these reactor pressure vessels come in. Now, I looked at the weights of pressure vessels. These were reported to be over 1,000 tons, 1,150 tons. And what I saw on pressure vessel weight, which the vessels don't have the cores, supposedly, and they don't have all the fuel, and they don't have the cooling, the water that cools the reactor. But these were extraordinarily heavy. I found weights of 500 tons, but these were double that. So did they contain reactor cores? I don't know. But anyway, they arrived. There was all this fanfare. The town of Burgoynesville was elated because now they would have jobs. Now we wouldn't have to rely on the Arabs for oil. We would have our own nuclear power. But the plant was decommissioned abruptly. Just boom, just like that. Too expensive. We can't do it. Congress just nixed it. And so what happened to those reactors? Nobody knows. Nobody remembers them leaving. They arrived. These are nuclear reactors. They arrived. The workers were told, no, we're not doing this project. Go home, sorry, can't afford it. And yet, the reactors never left. So my researcher, I'll call her, reports that nearby the Phipps Bend nuclear plant, after it was decommissioned, there were 2 buildings that went up in industrial parks. They were spec buildings. And one of them was in Rogersville, and another one was in, I'm trying to find where, it was called the Phipps Bend Industrial Park. So there were 2 buildings placed in these parks, industrial parks, that were built on spec. So remember, that's more money. 50,000 square foot buildings, 2 of them. And guess what? They never attracted any businesses. Nobody moved in there and paid for, effectively, with rent, the cost of building these things. So our researcher believes that the reactor pressure vessels were concealed in these buildings and then taken underground. And so my theory is this is all part of the United States Manhattan Project that was not shut down in the 1950s after the war. We know the medical division continued and birthed our defense labs, our, university chains, our places like Sloan Kettering Memorial, the Salk Institute, lots of research centers that drove modern science, modern medicine. But I believe the bomb building, nuclear atomic energy aspect of the Manhattan Project was moved underground. And those reactors, perhaps that got to Phipps Bend, that never left, were reactors that are going to power this underworld. And there are more. So if you look at all the decommissioned nuclear power plants, are there other reactors that were delivered that disappeared? There is an underworld that is going to be put together and is being put together for the elite alone. And it is going to be furnished with nuclear power, billions of gallons of fresh water, which rolls underground, as we know. Many people believe that water is, primary water, as they call it, is self-replenishing. We don't have limited water on the earth, and so this underworld will have access to all of that. It's impenetrable. It's shielded by rock. It's impenetrable to electromagnetic frequencies, to any kind of, cataclysm that occurs above ground. And there's so much that I've skipped in the writing of this newsletter, which was a double issue. But I just wanted to give a sense of how much activity goes around these spots that are actually access points to what I believe is this underworld, and that the Manhattan Project itself kept going and was used to build this. It's the new world, that it's the new world of the New World Order, when the above ground cataclysm, it becomes self-sustaining and self-perpetuating. And I can talk more about that in a minute, but I've been dominating, so you go ahead.
Well, just a reaction, again, as it pertains to the Denver airport, there's that dedication stone inside the airport, New World Airport Commission. And such a thing doesn't even publicly exist. But you mentioned the New World, the underworld. We know that the people at the top of the pyramid worship a beast, right? The beast system, they worship Lucifer. And when you talk about this new world, this underworld, you write in your newsletter that only the chosen, who have proven themselves by years of morality shedding and special service, get the sanctified work. And the sanctified work is all about secrecy and destruction. You write, will everyone who counts, as opposed to those who don't, retreat to palatial settings underground someday, supplied with nuclear power and fresh-flowing water, natural rivers, with elevated light rail transport, sheltered by rock, with natural temperature control and impenetrable security? I bet they will. The infrastructure is being created as we above ground wrestle with building our lives and families as the seas roll and we tweeter for balance every moment of the day. And that really resonates with me, Sofia, because we can see what they're doing to the environment. Fukushima alone being one thing that concerns me. I know it concerns you as well. And so much other nefarious things going on with the geoengineering, the destruction of the climate, the weather wars, the earthquake machines, HARP. It's just an endless litany of problems we see above ground. And it wouldn't surprise any of us, I don't think, to watch these demonic elite purposefully move in a direction that destroys everything above ground as they prepare to go underground. And I think they've been building these things out for decades.
Right. Also, we have to remember that this idea of psychopaths, I really never bought it, that 1% of us are psychopaths and somehow these people got into power. There are loads of people on the executive levels of all these nefarious schemes and assaults that are being dealt to humanity, animals, plants, trees, the sky, whatever. There's a multitude of people who are carrying out orders, and I don't believe they're psychopathic. They're just, as I called it in my newsletter, they have shed their morality. I think that they are competing desperately for a place in the sanctuary. And that's the underworld. So they will do whatever they are told so that they can live forever, because that's really what it's about. This marriage of man with machine,
Right.
the AI aspect. Underground, you're going to see people who will be renewed to some preferred age. They may be 90, but they will be, by regressing and replacing and regenerating through nanotechnology, they will be able to bring people back to whatever age they choose to remain in terms of how they look. And there will be immortality at some point. The biological system is being replaced with technology, and the technologies are very advanced. As I've said in previous shows, they use cryonics, they use all kinds of methodologies to freeze bodies so that they can one day revive them through their, whatever you want to call it, their metabiology, beyond biology. And I'm not just speaking fantastically here. I'm not talking about a fantasy. I think they're actually able to do a lot of this, and they're saving that underworld for themselves. So underground will be Homo evolutus, living forever. And it is going to be a world of darkness. But there are patents for recreating the sun as a diode. So it may be illuminated after all.
Now,
And
well, let me jump in, because I think what's interesting about what you're saying is that I agree with you. They are desecrating God's creation through transhumanism, and they actually do worship the beast to the extent that they do want to destroy the vessel God created, and they want to replace it with this transhumanist vessel of their own creation. And if we take a look at Revelation 9:6, it says, "During those days people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them." That to me sounds like a transhumanist future, a beast future, a future in which people have embraced the beast, taken the mark of the beast, and desecrated the temple, right? And desecrated the creation of God to the degree that they're no longer human and therefore will not be able to die. These people long for the opposite, the antithesis of what God is. They long to be gods themselves, and in doing so, through that hubris, I think, Sophia, they will become that which is despised. They will become beast-like, right? Because they don't worship God, they worship the devil. And this system that they're moving us toward, this satanic system, will be so dark that during those days, people will seek death but will not be able to find it. Do you agree with me or no?
well, I don't know about, how the earth was made, who made it, who designed it. I mean, you're referring to a creator, and a lot of people do, but I don't know the nature of that creator. I haven't defined that for myself yet. So the fact is that somebody is definitely imitating the natural order through unnatural technologies, and is getting very, very close. That destruction, the interruption of the natural order in many, many ways has been definitely enacted to the point that this natural world may not be able to recover. And I think they're waiting for a point at which the destruction is self-sustaining, and then they can get into their underworld and they can watch it through their smart technology, which will give them, periscopes to the above ground. They'll watch us all compete for life and struggle, and then the ones that actually make it will be the prototypes for the regeneration of the planet on its surface. Now, I posted on my blog something about nanomesh, actually polymer mesh. I happen to know someone who has Morgellons, whose body has just coughed up actual polymer mesh. It's coming out of the skin. I mean, out of a big crater in the skin.
Yeah, that's horrifying. And guys, if you don't know about Morgellons, do some Googling. Sophia's done some groundbreaking work in the area of chemtrails and geoengineering, and you talk about that, this synthetic biology. Can you just tell people a little bit about Morgellons, what it is and what you think it is? Is it a form of nanotech? Is it coming from the chemtrails and the geoengineering? Just discuss Morgellons a little bit for our audience.
Well, again, I have a video that's really Clifford Carnicom's making a synopsis of this. That's 30 minutes on my blog, just underneath the Morgellons mesh post. But there is a synthetic, you could call it disease, that affects certain people, although there's evidence now that the materials are embedded in all of us. But certain of us, not a large number, people start with the skin exuding shards of quartz and fibers that are not natural in any way. They're actual polymers. And then the progressed state of the affliction can become ulcerated lesions that never close. And in very advanced conditions, these lesions, which are like big sores, and some of them are 5 to 11, 12 inches, gouges in the body that never close. Imagine having an open wound for years and years and years. And they will exude all kinds of things, from a really horrible kind of biofilm to more clumps of fibers that are all different colors that match what they're doing in nanotechnology. All you need to do is Google nanofibers, nanotubes. Some people throw out of their bodies little spherical, very geometric, faceted balls and spheres. There are little things that look like, oh, I don't even know, electronics,
Right.
Diodes, and there are certainly a large number of crystalline formations. There are things that have inscriptions on them that look like lettering. I mean, these are small, some of them, very small, microscopic, but other people are throwing out materials that are advanced enough and large enough that they are grasshoppers, insects, twigs, bark, leaves. And so whatever human beings are able to create, Sean, I mean, yeah, we all love our dogs and our cats and our horses, and some of us like wild animals like wolves and lions. And those animals create to a certain extent. They'll make dens and they'll, do intelligent, orderly kinds of things for their survival in their little communities. But humans create in very, very distinct and broad ways, unlimited ways. I mean, humans create, just look around you. We've created all this stuff. And I think that there is a kind of 3D printing going on in these Morgellons people. I have never voiced it this way, but they are able, from within their bodies, to cough up this alternate biology. They're able to assemble human beings out of openings in their body, are able to produce life forms that resemble insects, leaves. I mean, this is the beginning of the manufacturing of the New World Order.
Right, and I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to alter the image of a human being. They're trying to change human beings. I think there's experimentation that's going on all of us. This is open. We're all part of an unknown, unannounced experiment. And they're changing our biology. They're changing our DNA. You discussed that in your presentation about chemtrails and synthetic biology. And as it relates to is it Morgellons or Morgellons, Sophia?
I believe it's Morgellons, but
Morgellons.
I mean, lots of people say it the other way,
Okay.
so don't worry about it.
Okay. Well, I mean, as it relates to Morgellons or Morgellons, however you say it, my thesis is that they're trying to change, quote unquote, God's creation, right? Human beings, as we were created, into their own beastly, devilish version. As they usher us into their new world order, as they implement their transhumanist agenda. And I think it's pretty darn scary because we even see elites, panicked elites, are buying bomb-proof luxury survival bunkers to escape, they say, civil unrest, but also disasters. High net worth individuals, even from the general public, are now starting to go underground, at least preparing for the inevitable nuclear war, World War III. God forbid that were to happen. So Why don't we circle back to the Cumberland Gap and your ultimate thesis here as it pertains to these deep underground military bases? I like to call it the deep state. These deep state bunkers, these deep state projects, these multi-billion-dollar projects that are hidden from the public, like the Denver airport. What better way to create a continuity of government underground command and control center than to build it right in front of people, under the guise of the Denver airport? We know that trillions of dollars are missing from the Pentagon, more than $8 trillion by last count. The Pentagon admits it can't account for. Where did all this money go? We hear Catherine Austin Fitts and Joseph P. Farrell talk about the breakaway civilization. Is that what you think's going on here ultimately, Sophia? There's a breakaway civilization, and they're building a world for themselves, and they're going to leave the rest of us to die, like the Georgia Guidestones say, 500 million people living in harmony with nature. Well, if there's only 500 million of us left, that means 6 or 7 billion of us have to go.
Well, there's definitely going to be a very steep attrition because the assaults that we above ground, and I'm including animals and trees and insects, all life forms, are not going to be able to get through that. But some will. And I am of the impression that certain people whose bodies are already manufacturing life forms, that we're going to be harnessed, the human being will be harnessed as a 3D printer and will cough up the new world of GMO ordered bugs and trees and plants. I mean, we will really be serving the new technological heaven that they will be building from their underground bunkers, all controlled by smart technologies and wireless radiation, wireless means. That's why they're putting so much wireless. They're just introducing something called Starry, which will be 30 to 300 gigahertz. Gigahertz is billion hertz. They're even raising the oscillations to that level now. Wi-Fi is 2.4 gigahertz, 2.4 billion hertz. It's bad enough for the body, but they're going to start deploying wavelengths that are so short, that are so utterly, we have no idea how they're going to affect biological tissues. But that's coming next. Starry, Starry. Again, the deep state, the breakaway is temporary. And from their underworld, as lords of Hades, Satan's twins, whatever you want to call them, they will rule. They will watch a new world being created above ground to their technological specifications. There will be nothing natural about the new world. Nature itself, which is very resilient. I mean, I suppose if they were to just leave nature alone right now, it would still be able to recover. This is just my 2-cent theory, that the destruction isn't advanced enough in the natural world yet. But give a little more time, throw a few more of their techno bombs at us, and it's going to be irreversible.
Yeah.
And that's when because they will still have some aspect of natural self left. So they're going to have to retreat to a palatial underworld. And it's going to be nuclear powered. The Manhattan Project, when you look at all of the, I skipped the whole part of the newsletter that had to do with minerals, saltpeter, nitrates, but all of that industry in America thrived for decades. And what was that all about? It was about producing the materials for nuclear power, the heavy water for the coolant. So there's going to be a nuclear-powered underworld, and the destruction of the overworld, us, where we live, is going to be, I don't know what will continue to power that, but it's going to be controlled through wireless technology and made into a completely new, recast pseudo-life, synthetic biology. I I can't say replica because it won't be anything like what we're used to, but there will be new materials up here and they will control them completely.
Well, you've just described a world I don't think many of us want to live in, and it's just it's just a terrible shame that these monsters are in control. You mentioned GMOs earlier. I know we got to wrap this up, but I should just mention the fact, did you see this incredible news item that Bayer has made an offer to buy Monsanto? Really, Monsanto, probably one of the top 5 most evil corporations on planet Earth. Bayer's right up there. I don't know if you guys know this, but Bayer was caught selling HIV-contaminated blood products to hemophiliacs in this nation. And then once they were caught, they stopped selling that product, Factor 8, here, and they sold it in Europe. I mean, these people that run these corporations, Sofia, I mean, truly evil people. And so for Bayer to make an offer to buy Monsanto, that tells you everything you know about this globalist corporate structure.
Right. Well, it's consolidating. You know, it's consolidating power, it's consolidating wealth, it's consolidating technologies.
Yeah, I would say they're consolidating their evil. They're consolidating their evil. And of course, now they want to keep Great Britain in the EU and destroy the sovereignty and the decision-making, the political power of the people forever. If Britain decides to stay in the EU with this vote coming up later this month, it will be the absolute destruction of the people once and for all. They will be ruled by this totalitarian state, by the EU, by unelected bureaucrats who are answerable to no one. And that's ultimately the vision for the New World Order. And again, it's not a place where any of us are going to want to live. We don't want to live in a world where technocratic bureaucrats run everything and they're unanswerable to the people. They're essentially making us slaves. That's the vision, Sofia.
All right, but let me turn this completely around. If it's true that they're going to use human biology and human creativity, which exceeds that of anything else on this planet, other animals, other life forms, and we're going to make the leaves and the bugs and the trees and the plants for the new world. If that's true, that's just a wild thought I have. Just remind yourself that you are a human being and that by definition, you possess this extraordinary ability to create yourself. We are very, very untapped as human beings. And if we remind ourselves that we are not robots by any means yet, and that it's our choice to become robotic, to habituate ourselves to things like our phones, not live in our present life and just be constantly referring to our phone for the input that used to be coming at us in the real third dimensional physical world. We didn't look at screens all day. So this is all choice making. So at the end of the day, we are creative. We remain creative. And that's a choice we can enact minute by minute by minute. And as long as we keep that choice alive and we continue to push and pull for our wholeness, not our reduced self into a techno robot, we have a chance. And the more of us that do that, the better off we're all going to be.
Well said, Sofia. Well, I really appreciate your time today. I think this was an interesting conversation. Of course, it's an open-ended one. It's something that we should continue to talk about and keep an eye on. And I think that your newsletter was a good segue into talking about these deep underground military bases and the deep state. Again, it's a huge, huge topic, and I would direct people to go and check out a very interesting conversation that we posted not too long ago between Joseph P. Farrell and Catherine Austin Fitts about the breakaway civilization. I'll post that below. You guys are in for a treat.
And the more information you would like on this Cumberland Gap project, you can go to the website everybodyhatescharlie.com, everybodyhatescharlie.com, and see what's posted there, because that's the collection of material that I was given which I used to write this newsletter.
That's right. And guys, you can also visit Sofia at her blog, sofiasmallstorm.com, and do visit her online store. Sofia, tell people how they can get some of those healthy products you carry.
Oh, my best sellers have become magnesium, if you can believe it. Magnesium cream is just selling through the roof. And I have to tell you, Sean, I had a visit from a friend. It was a very big shock. She had been in a motorcycle accident 2 years ago, and I didn't recognize her. Her face was smashed. She had a giant, huge scar on her right side of her nose. The nostril was flattened. It looked like she couldn't even breathe. Her color was bad. I just couldn't believe it. And she told me her eyes were tearing all the time. And I said, well, you probably have had a lot of damage inside your mucosal membrane. She had had multiple surgeries on her nose already, all medically necessary, not cosmetic. And she was a mess. And I offered her some magnesium cream, one dab of cream. I looked at her an hour later and I said, you got to go upstairs and look in the mirror. And she did, and she couldn't believe it. She put on another dab of cream. So 2 hours later, that smashed, deformed, closed up nose had started, all the inflammation went down. It started regaining its normal shape. The nostril opened up. She told me she could breathe. She was getting back to her old self just from 2 dabs of magnesium cream.
Well, that's fantastic. And I'll tell you what, guys, if you want to get some of these products from Sofia and support her, because this is a way to support her and her research, visit avatarproducts.com. You can get roll-on magnesium deodorant, magnesium spray, like she was just talking about, nascent iodine and oil base, argan oil and argan soap. Lots of great stuff over at Avatar Products.
Yeah, and these are things that I've actually stumbled into that have worked. Magnesium is not just for, extreme conditions. It's the mineral that we need to put back into the interior of our cells. It's the dominant ion in the cell. You can slather magnesium cream, lotion, spray on your body, and your body will love it. It's for ordinary things as well. I'm just giving you an example that was pretty extreme. It's the most extreme, amazing testimonial I have.
Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in for this broadcast with Sofia Smallstorm. Sofia is one of these researchers that we really hold in high regard. This one was a little bit out of our box in terms of the content, but I think it's very, very interesting. And again, check out that interview about the breakaway civilization that I'll link to below. Our guest has been Sofia Smallstorm. Sofia, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Sean. More power to you and your listeners. And remember, we are creative. We don't have to be robots.
Agreed. And I think the more empowered people are with information like this, the more they will have the ability to say no to these beastly systems that we see rolling out before us. People need to become awake and aware in order to resist New World Order tyranny and the New World Order system, which is rolling out so quickly now. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your support at sgtreport.com and thelibertymill.com. Real news 24/7. Lots of great interviews ahead, so stay tuned and thanks for your support. God bless.